Shuri prays to Bast to help her in Wakanda's most terrifying moment of need since the passing of King T'Chaka. She's running out of time, and her brother's life is at stake. Time is of the essence. Since Eric Killmonger burned down every single heart-shaped herb essential to the crowning of the Black Panther, Shuri has been working tirelessly in her lab to recreate it. Her research shows that the same herb that grants the Black Panther his power could also heal her brother T'Challa from a devastating illness. This is her last chance to save T'Challa, Wakanda's Black Panther. Ramonda, T'Challa and Shuri's mother, joins Shuri in her lab, with the same sad eyes as when they lost their beloved King T'Chaka. T'Challa, the king, Wakanda's Black Panther, is gone. A discreet ceremony is held for those who were closest to T'Challa, including M'Baku and Okoye. They pray for T'Challa, who's now in the company of the ancestors. The ceremony that mourns the Black Panther's loss also celebrates his beautiful life throughout the streets of Wakanda. Ramonda and Shuri give T'Challa a heartbroken goodbye, and so he ascends to his everlasting throne, knowing he was loved and cherished by his family and by his people. The Wakandans now face a new and somber chapter in their history. The kingdom of Wakanda has a new ruler, Queen Ramonda, who leads her people in this time of deep grief. As a nation, they face the pressure of other nations to share their extensive supply of vibranium. 1 year later, the United Nations holds a conference in Geneva, Switzerland. The United States spokesperson goes first and shares his utter disappointment with Wakanda in choosing not to get involved in global matters and for continuously refusing to share its vibranium. Not a single word of comfort and grief for the loss of the sovereign ruler of Wakanda is expressed by the U.S. representative. It's then Queen Ramonda's turn to speak. She states how valuable it is for the kingdom of Wakanda to protect and preserve its resources and its people. The night before the unconference, one of Wakanda's outreach vibranium facilities was invaded, and the Dora Milaje brings forward the perpetrators. The Queen wraps up her speech by assuring the world that Wakanda will not kneel before such demands. In the meantime, an operation is in motion in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, in an attempt to find new sources of vibranium. The search group, led by Dr. Graham, finds what seems to be the precious metal, but they also feel that something is off. The control room loses contact with the dive team, and up on the surface, a horde of sirens control the minds of the soldiers on the ship's deck. They're in a trance and jump into the water. The unknown warriors of the ocean raid the ship successfully, but Dr. Graham manages to hop in a helicopter and fly away. She does go very far as a mysterious man attacks the aircraft and tosses it into the ocean. The man's identity is not revealed, but he also came out of the water and, unlike the other sea creatures, this guy can fly. The sun rises in Wakanda, and Queen Ramonda arrives home from the conference in Geneva. Shuri is so focused on her research that she doesn't even notice that her mom is right behind her. Shuri's workload is not a coincidence. It's the day that marks the first year since her brother's passing, and she's doing whatever she can to stop herself from remembering it. Mother and daughter sit by a bonfire, watching elephants migrate. The night is dark, but seems to be pleasant. Ramonda talks to Shuri as a concerned parent. She believes Shuri is not working on her healing process after losing T'Challa. The emotional conversation is put on hold when elephants startle them after sensing something approaching. They are surprised by a man emerging from the dark waters of the river in front of them. He arrives, dazzled by the mesmerizing nature of Wakanda. Shuri and Queen Ramonda hold their attack position. The queen questions who the man is and what he is doing in her lands. He introduces himself as Kukulkan, but, for his enemies, he is Namor. The surprises don't cease to shock the queen and her daughter as Namor asks for Wakanda's help to protect his nation's vibranium after the U.S. military attack. Queen Ramonda doesn't buy his argument, stating that vibranium only exists in Wakanda, but Shuri notices that his adornments, traditional symbols of his people, are covered in vibranium. Queen Ramonda still can't understand how this man breached Wakanda like that. He insists on asking for her help to find the American scientist that's leading the underwater search for vibranium, putting his people's safety in jeopardy, but she doesn't give in to his threats. Before leaving Wakanda, Namor warns Queen Ramonda that he represents a powerful people and that he has a robust army. Namor gives Ramonda a conch in case she decides to help and needs to speak to him. The very next day, Queen Ramonda summons Wakanda's council to discuss the matter. M'Baku fears that, after helping Namor, he would keep asking for more intervention, putting Wakanda in a difficult position. On the other hand, Namor made clear that he has a massive army, ready to wage war if necessary. The conch isn't the only thing Namor left in Wakanda. He also brought with him one of the U.S. military vibranium detectors, something Ramonda has never seen before. Okoye insists that the queen allow her and the Dora Milaje to pursue the scientist in question. Okoye also brings up the idea of taking Shuri with her, arguing that the mission might be good for Shuri to clear her head a bit. The queen's first reaction is to deny Okoye's request, but her general gives reasonable arguments. All the way from Wakanda to Virginia, and Agent Everett Ross, Shuri's favorite colonizer, as she likes to put it, is out for a run when Okoye and Shuri come out of the woods. They ask for information on the scientist that built the vibranium detector used to find Namor's territory. Agent Ross is a bit conflicted because he's also part of the operation, but he complies, knowing that Shuri and Akoi will do the right thing. Ross drops a bombshell when he describes the scientist responsible for building the detector as being a college kid, and that she's the only person who knows how to build the infamous machine. Akoi and Shuri report back to Queen Ramonda as soon as they find the kid. Shuri makes sure to blend in as a college student, so she can contact the kid and take her safely to Wakanda, as her mother requested. The kid scientist's name is Riri Williams, and she recognizes Princess Shuri in the blink of an eye. Shuri talks to her to try to make sense of why such a brilliant young scientist built such a dangerous machine for the government. Riri has no clue what she's talking about. All she knows is that she built a vibranium detector as a school project, only to piss off a professor that doubted her. Shuri's persuasive abilities are not as effective as Akoi's, so Riri takes them to her secret lab. Shuri is impressed by her tech, and that's the first time something has ever impressed Shuri. It doesn't take long for the FBI to find Riri's hideout. Now, they have a tiny window of time to escape. They must get out of that warehouse at once. Akoi gets in Riri's car, and Shuri storms out of there on a rad bike, but Riri is fleeing in great style. She dodges the FBI agents by flying away in some kind of armor that resembles a lot of a famous tech developed by a certain American industrialist. A frantic pursuit begins, and Riri is already on the tail of the surveillance drone that's been following them. At a certain point, the police block a bridge, giving Shuri and Akoi no other choice but to stop. Riri Williams has something completely different in mind, and blows up the police cars blocking the bridge. Her fast instincts save the princess and the general. Before they have time to make sense of what just happened, a water grenade goes off. Riri Williams is also down. The trio is surrounded by soldiers of Namer's army, who are there with the sole purpose of taking Riri with them. This is probably the first time Akoi meets opponents as strong and skilled as her. The whole situation makes her doubt for a second if they could be more powerful than her, but she doesn't have time to second-guess herself, because now they've taken Princess Shuri with them. The next morning, Agent Ross, accompanied by his boss DeFontaine, isolates the bridge where the fight took place. He's the only one to notice a certain beaded bracelet made of Wakandan technology, and hides it from DeFontaine. Akoi must return to Wakanda to brief the Queen on the latest development, and ask her permission to set off on a rescue mission, but Queen Ramonda shocks her by stripping her of her post as General of the Dora Milaje. Ramonda's harsh decision makes every member of the council speechless. Despite being heartbroken and furious at herself, Akoi obeys her queen and leaves. Queen Ramonda is helpless, now that both her children and her husband are gone. Her last hope is Shuri's personal AI, Grid, that might know how to locate her Kimoyo beads. The signal travels to the U.S. to Agent Everett Ross. Ramonda demands explanations on why he has Shuri's Kimoyo beaded bracelet, and tells him both Shuri and Riri Williams were taken by Namor. Ross reassures the Queen that he's there for her, no matter what. Ramonda's next step is to try to locate Shuri's Kimoyo beaded earrings, and Grit reveals it has tracked the earrings' signal to a particular spot in the Atlantic Ocean. Queen Ramonda makes an unexpected move when she decides to go to Haiti. Perhaps a desperate measure, after all, these are desperate times for Wakanda. Queen Ramonda arrives at a school, a very nice one, looking for the headmistress, that happens to be the incomparable Nakia. Ramonda shares her disappointment at Nakia for not attending T'Challa's funeral, but reassures her that she's Wakandan, no matter what. The Queen changes the subject quickly and tells Nakia that Shuri's being held prisoner, and she needs someone who she can trust to find both Shuri and the little genius Riri Williams. Riri and Shuri are in a visually striking cave, and, as if things weren't intriguing enough, she receives a gift, a dress made especially for her. Riri doesn't fall for the kindness. Nakia embarks on her mission to find Shuri. She arrives at the Yucatan Peninsula, in Mexico. She pretends to be a researcher and seeks answers related to an ancient legend, an unimaginable being. A villager agrees to talk to her, and explains that there is such a man as Nakia is looking for. Everything started as a myth for the people of the Yucatan Peninsula. They thought it was a spirit, but it turns out that they were dealing with Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god. The old lady tells Nakia that this god is more powerful and older than she imagined. Whoever dares to look for him never returns. Shuri agrees to meet Namor, and she already has many questions. There's a stunning ancient bracelet she recognizes as being from the 16th century. Namor explains it belonged to his mother. Shuri then asks him point blank if he's been alive all this time, and if his mother was human. Namor doesn't feel the need to lie or hide anything. The history of his people was permanently stained after the Spanish invasion, and his people were forced to find another place to call their home. Their shaman, the spiritual leader of Namor's people, was given the gift of seeing a way to save the villagers from the vicious attacks and deadly diseases brought by the Spanish conquistadors. The wise man found a unique flower that would turn their lives upside down, but it was their only chance to survive. The villagers had to ingest the plant to survive, but Namor's mother was pregnant with him at the time and feared for her son's well-being. After long conversations with the shaman, she was convinced to take it and had to promise the wise man that her son, the first child to be born in their new world, would become their king. The lives of the villagers ended sometime after ingesting the mysterious plant, but they rose again. Their skin turned blue, and suddenly, they felt the need to run to the sea. They could no longer breathe air, and now were able to draw oxygen from the sea, so they settled in the ocean. Namer's mother gave birth to the firstborn son of the new kingdom, Talokan. As the shaman foresaw, the little boy was born with features his people had never considered. The properties of the blue plant gave him wings on his ankles and ears that pointed to the clouds. His biology was unique. He didn't age as fast as an ordinary human, and could inhabit both the depths of the ocean and the surface. After his mother passed, he went back up to the surface to her village, to give her a place to rest, but he wasn't prepared for what was coming. His mother's village didn't exist anymore. Instead, the Spanish settlers grew estates and enslaved her people. Namer couldn't bear to see such atrocities and took justice into his own hands. Shuri tries to see his point in all the confusion, but begs him not to get his revenge by taking Riri's life. Shuri bargains, asking Namer to take her out to see his nation. She wears a special suit and follows him until they arrive at a spectacular sight, Talokan, the capital city, a place untouched by the hands of men. Shuri is dazzled by the beauty of the place and its people. The tour ends with a grand finale. Shuri is taken to the heart of Talokan, a sanctuary where Namer has brought the sun to his people in the depths of the ocean by using vibranium. Shuri is speechless. Back in the surface world, Nakia stares at the ocean as she stands by a historic Mayan pyramid. Riet contacts her, saying it has found Shuri's Kamoyo beaded earrings signal. It comes from an underwater cave, and Nakia gets orders from Queen Ramonda to proceed and find Shuri. She knows it won't be easy. The negotiations continue between Shuri and Namer. Even though the discussion is not a pleasant one, Namer doesn't forget his people's tradition, and gives her a bracelet made of the very flower that enabled his people to survive, as a sign of courtesy. He won't change his mind about Riri, and Shuri simply can't let him take her life. She bets on a more diplomatic approach, but Namer reveals he's ready to wage war against the surface nations, now that he knows they are getting ready to attack Talokan. Shuri opposes his idea, even as Namer insists on an alliance between Wakanda and Talokan. He warns her that if Wakanda isn't on board, they're automatically enemies of Talokan. At Langley, Ross has to endure an outrageous meeting to discuss the US's next move on Wakanda. They want to destabilize the country if they don't comply in handing their vibranium to the American government. Ross is utterly against an offensive move on Wakanda and shares the bad news with Queen Ramonda. The Queen has a full schedule and lands in Cape Verde to meet with Namer. Both rulers are willing to protect their nations by all means necessary, but it seems like Wakanda is slightly outnumbered without the Black Panther to defend it, and Namer knows that. He threatens the Queen and her people. Shuri updates Riri on their predicament, and before they have time to process everything, Nakia comes out of the blue and strikes a citizen of Talokan. Shuri knows Nakia's move means war now, but all Nakia cares about is taking Shuri and Riri back to Wakanda safe and sound. In Talokan, Namer prepares for war against Wakanda. Riri has to deal with the fact that she's trapped in Wakanda for her own sake. At this moment, it's the only safe place for her. Another heartfelt moment in Wakanda happens when Nakia meets Okoye downtown. The relentless general doesn't look like herself. The Queen's banishment took its toll, and Okoye is miserable and ashamed for her failure in keeping the princess safe. They notice something out of ordinary on the streets. There's too much water rising fast, and it doesn't take long until Talokan strikes first. Soon enough, the rivers of Wakanda are stealthily occupied by Talokan warriors. M'Baku is the first to reach the water and alerts Wakanda of an invasion. The warriors of Talokan take over the city and cause a massive flood, unleashing chaos. Then comes their leader, Namer, with one purpose and one purpose only. M'Baku takes a stand and faces Namer, but he underestimates his enemy. Against her mother's will, again, Shuri runs toward the fight, this time with Anka, one of the bravest Dora Milaje soldiers. Okoye and Nakia board a Wakandan ship and come up with their striking plan. None of them is aware of the tragedy that's about to happen. As promised, Namer doesn't lose sight of his target and invades the Queen's palace, flooding the place, and Riri and Queen Ramonda are washed away in the violent water. Queen Ramonda rescues Riri, who's unconscious, at the cost of her own life. Okoye and Nakia get to the palace and help Ramonda and Riri. Princess Shuri and Anka come right after them as Namer gives his payback speech. Riri comes back, but Wakanda has, once again, lost its ruler to a terrifying attack. There's no time to waste. The Queen is no more, and M'Baku knows what's coming. So, during Ramonda's funeral, he talks to Shuri about their next move to protect the people of Wakanda. It feels like Shuri doesn't even have the right to mourn her mother, the last person who truly knew her. Time is running out, so Shuri goes back to her lab. She doesn't have any other choice but to find a way to defeat Namer, and he has no idea of the essential role he'll play in Shuri's plan. In the US, Ross has an unwelcoming visit. DeFontaine sneaked into his house, pressuring him to disclose everything he knows about Wakanda. She knows he's keeping a great deal of information from her, and it feels like he has no idea of how far Director DeFontaine is willing to go to secure her status and domain. She decides to arrest him. Shuri contemplates her devastating situation and asks for Riri's help, but the young genius is not so confident. Shuri knows that the only way Wakanda can survive is by moving forward with her work. She teams up with Grit again and studies the unique properties of the token she was given in Talakon. It turns out that the bracelet is made of the blue plant that gave the Talakon people a chance to thrive underwater. Shuri and Riri discuss their findings together. Meanwhile, Nakia and the Dora Milaje lead their people to Jabari land, with the help of M'Baku. Shuri reminds Okoye of her duties as a protector of the Wakandan people, and gives her an assignment to gather her warriors to fight the Talakon army. Riri keeps working on her project to join forces with Shuri, who reaches a breakthrough at last. Shuri finally finds a way to replicate the heart-shaped herb by using the components of the Talakon plant. Nakia and Riri convince her that she's the only one who's capable or worthy of receiving the blessings of Bast by ingesting the herb. Nakia carries out the emotional ritual. Shuri's body feels the ravishing power of the herb. She's taken to the depths of her consciousness, and as tradition mandates, she's about to meet with the spirit of the one that represents and connects to what her heart desires, and to find out her purpose as Wakanda's protector. She's taken by an overwhelming feeling of happiness as she sees Wakanda's throne. Her mind moves faster than her feet, she thinks, as she rushes desperately to unveil who's sitting on the throne and who's going to provide her counsel. She feels like her heart is about to jump out of her chest. Shuri can't believe her eyes. Her father, mother, and brother have occupied that throne that stands as one of Wakanda's greatest symbols, but none of them is there for her rite of passage. She is welcomed by her cousin, Killmonger, who left his mark in Wakanda as a ruler who turned everything upside down. She doesn't understand why he's the one their eye, but Killmonger opens her eyes to her heart's true desire, revenge. And no one is better at revenge. He pushes Shuri to admit her true intentions in becoming Wakanda's protector and tells her they are more alike than she thinks. Both of them have lost everything and feel the need to seek justice by all means necessary. Shuri comes back from her dream, but refuses to accept that her family has abandoned her. She thinks she's failed in becoming Wakanda's protector, but Nakia is now her voice of reason, and so they see the proof that Shuri came back from her dream differently. It's time for her to face her future, the future of Wakanda, and perhaps the future of the world. She doesn't have much time to come to terms with her new reality. Time is of the essence, now more than ever. The Jabari land is the first stop for her. The people of Wakanda sing to welcome their new protector. The Black Panther survives. The council reunites again under new management, of course, and M'Baku shares his concerns with the idea of destroying a god, but the Wakandans want it. M'Baku's new position as the Black Panther's counselor weighs on his shoulders, as he bends over backwards to make Shuri see the facts. The Black Panther is strong-willed, and she's also hurt. Talking her out of her revenge plan doesn't work for M'Baku. They prepare for war, and Nakia also stands by the Black Panther's side, guiding her. In Talakon, Namor receives terrible news. There's another vibranium detector coming their way. Talakon is under attack, and little does Namor know that the US military isn't the only one coming for him. A Wakandan vessel appears on the surface of the ocean, packed with warriors, led by the new Black Panther. It's the fight of their lives. Riri introduces to the world her mysterious project, a suit that allows her to fight like a certain war machine she once saw. The Black Panther captures Namor in her ship, but someone is coming to help him. Namor and the army of Talakon. The Black Panther understands the nature of Namor, so she takes him to a desert to strip him of his powers. No one is prepared for such a calamity. The war is divided into two fields. Nakia, Okoye, and M'Baku fight the Talakon army in the water, while the Black Panther and the feathered serpent god Kukulkan draw their battle on the ground. The Black Panther blows her last strike at Namor after he strikes at her. They're both weak. She remembers the rest of her conversation with Killmonger and concludes that, as Black Panther, she won't follow in either her brother's or her cousin's steps. She has the chance to put an end to Namor, but a wave of conflict washes over her. The Black Panther remembers her time in Talakon, and everything Kukulkan's people have been through, horrors imposed on them like the cruelty imposed on Wakanda. She feels her mother's presence, and spares Kukulkan's life. Her gesture reminds him of his mother's kindness. The Black Panther proposes to protect Talakon's secret, provided Kukulkan kneels before her. The battle on Wakanda's ship ends when the feathered serpent god and the Black Panther arrive together, announcing their truce. It seems like life is getting back on track in Wakanda. Shuri returns to her lab to say goodbye to Riri. It's time for the little genius to go back home safely. Riri invites Shuri to go with her, but Wakanda's protector has other plans. It's time for the Black Panther's coronation, as it happened to her brother once. One of the elders introduces the Black Panther, but M'Baku is the one coming out of the ship. He announces that the Black Panther is not joining the ceremony, and that he, as the representative of the Jabari people, proposes to challenge the throne of Wakanda. Kukulkan gives Talakon's walls a new detail. He paints the battle between him and the Black Panther to remind his people that their alliance will make both nations stronger than ever. In the meantime, in the USA, Agent Ross is taken into custody, but something stops the trip up to jail. Okoye attacks the van to free Ross. In Haiti, Shuri makes her way to meet Nakia at her home. It's by the beach in a peaceful town. She's there to conclude a painful chapter of her life. Nakia gives Shuri some time alone to pay her brother one last tribute. The calm waves of the sea carry away Shuri's tears, but the warm winds bring something to lift her spirit up and bring her comfort. Nakia joins Shuri and introduces her to Taosaint, a cute little boy that resembles someone she loves. Nakia introduces Taosaint to Shuri, his auntie. Shuri closes a chapter of her life, a heavy one, in order to give a fresh start to a new one. Little Taosaint asks Auntie Shuri if she's good at keeping secrets. She finds his questions funny. Shuri thought she had already cried all the tears she could cry, but little Taosaint proved her wrong. The witty boy confides to his Aunt Shuri that Taosaint is his Haitian name, and that his real name is Prince T'Challa, son of King T'Challa. He will carry on his father's legacy, knowing he was deeply loved by his grandmother, and by his loving father, King T'Challa, protector of Wakanda, the Black Panther.